Okay, today on the bench we've got the Super Robot Rotate-O-Matic. It's a Horikawa made in Japan. They made a series of slightly different versions from the late 1970s to the very early 1980s. So basically between 1979 and 1983, 84, somewhere in there. This was closer to near the end of the run. And the one thing that stands out about this particular Robothut is the very colorful lithography that they did on the metal surfaces to make it really stand out and look nice. And as with most of the ones that get sent to me for repair, this thing has got a boatload of problems, which is good for you because as we go through them, then hopefully you'll learn a little something about what's going on in there. I saved a gear that I wanted to show you. Got to dig it out. I didn't have it sitting out here. So down in the leg block mechanism, there will be two helical gears. You got this one here that's on the crank that drives the legs, and then this one here that drives that. You can see how they drive at a right angle to each other. But you can also see, if the camera locks into focus, there you go, that this one is split. Now it isn't slipping yet, but it is completely split, and there is just a little, I don't think the camera will click that up, but I can feel it clicking, moving. There's a little bit of slop in there, so there's just a question of time until this thing fails. Fortunately, exactly the same gear setup and gear is used in the China repros that are out there now. You know, back when Japan made the Star Strider, and then when they stopped, China started almost instantly with their version of the Star Strider, and their first version was called Spacewalkman. It's been sold under many, many different names since then, Mr. D Sale and on and on and on. But most of those China ones will provide you, if you can find one that's beat up or missing an arm or something, will provide you with this gear, which inevitably seems to split eventually. This one isn't split yet, so this one's a good candidate to stick down in this lower section and hopefully get this part of the robot going again. Now, someone had already been in this robot before. It's obvious all over the place. Even on the bottom of the feet, they'd taken it apart, because I could tell by the way the tabs were bent. And this plastic base, where it meets with this metal part, this side here was clear up in the air. In other words, they didn't nest the foot heel into the foot proper all the way before they bent it together. Just left it kind of crappy hanging there. What am I going to do? I'm going to take some white lithium grease and apply it to this new gear. I'm going to make a little bit more room here, because we're going to be talking about these parts one by one as we go along. But I want to make sure this is lubed up good, in the hopes that maybe it'll last a little bit longer. So I'm just sticking a little bit of grease on here. It doesn't really matter what kind of grease you use on this part down here. I just happen to have some white lithium already in the house, so why not use that, right? Now, one thing I'm going to add to this, which didn't normally have, is I'm going to add a small washer spacer to the bottom. And what I'm hoping that'll do is raise this gear up just a smidgen. So when we assemble this part, the travel distance between the body rotate gear and the walking gear, which is the one that we just put on here, is less. Because this robot had a problem in that when it ran, it would walk, but when to body turn, it would only body turn a little bit and then stop working. And the brass gear that moves up and down wasn't connecting 100% with the rotating body gear. So I'm hoping to get rid of a little bit of that slop on there. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on this shaft here too. But this is an experiment because it shouldn't normally need that. But this one having a problem, I'm hoping this helps resolve it. Now I'm bending these 4 tabs over, which is another reason why I really hope this helps resolve it, because as you know, you can only bend these tabs so many times. In order for this to work and put it together, these have to be bent all the way down and out of the way. Which is a very sharp, tight bend. Sorry about my cold. Now you have these tabs here where they're all bent at a right angle. That's what's going to hold the upper gearbox in place. We'll set the gearbox on, and then we have to straighten all of these bends out to hold the 2 parts together. I have already cleaned this surface. It had corrosion, plus it had been lubricated by somebody in the past. As we all know, that tends to gunk everything up instead of making it work better. Another problem that the toy had was with the gun movement part, which is what this lever here controls. There's a little flat lever down in there. We're talking about down in there. Maybe if I turn this light on. Okay. This part, the spring wants to, well, how can I explain this best? Anyway, there's a spring here which is pulling on this part, and then you have this lever which is part of the body turn part, and that little flat surface down in there that is moving between the two had been bent, mangled, probably by someone trying to force these guns without the toy running at some point. And that was one of the problems with why the door opening and closing and guns moving part wasn't working. Now the tricky part about putting all this together is we got to get that shaft into that hole around these nubs, and at the same time start that lever into this piece. a lot that's got to go on there. Let's see if we can hit it in the first or second try. I gotta get this up in there. Come on. I've got part of it now. I guess if I wasn't trying to keep this in frame with a camera, it would be a lot easier. Okay, we're getting there. Now this part where it comes through with that, you've got to bend that up, otherwise it will drag and hang up. It's got to be bent up, and this part has to be bent up like so. Now we need to straighten all these little tab pieces, which on this one I think there's 8. Is there 6 or is there 8? We'll find out here in a second. Got the 2 in the front. Let's get the 2 in the back because these are the easiest. There we go. And then there's 2 hiding down in here. So that means there's 6. The only one right now that's difficult to get to is this one. I may have to We may have to wait and get that one in Rotomatic mode, which isn't a bad time to start testing some things here anyway. I've got a separate little battery pack and some clip leads so that we can test this to see if the gears and everything are working like they're supposed to. Here's our lock mode. I stopped it there so I could get to this one that I hadn't bent yet. Okay. I knew it was going to be a problem with the test leads. I didn't know what to do about it. Maybe if I tried holding it up above. Okay. So it worked. It rotated around without the weight of the body on there. And it went back into walking. Here's your rotating ramp sequencer. Like you know, we've talked about these in the past. There's 2 gears stacked there. One gear has 1 tooth less, and you can see that ramp. So it will crawl up the ramp, and that separates the 2 gears as it goes up the ramp, which raises this whole shaft. And that shaft raising causes that brass gear to go from the low position, which is walk, up to the upper position, which is body rotate. And then when the ramp comes all the way back around to that open spot in that gear, it drops back down and goes back into walk mode. So that's what's going on there. Now, I'm turning up the soldering gun, get that ready. I've got the body back here, and it had the acid leak problems, so I have gone in with the Dremel and the wire brush and cleaned all the contacts. We can get those working better. Touched up a little bit of the corroded area, so hopefully it won't corrode and become worse. It's good on the inside. Whoever been in here last even had the arm assemblies on wrong. So this arm can turn all the way up and then stops, and then can turn back to about there and then stops. There are actual stops built in there. Whoever had put these on last had it so they could turn from about straight up around to the back, but they couldn't come around to the front. Very very crazy whoever worked on it last. Anywho, the battery door had a lot of corrosion on it too, so I gave it a little cleaning and a little paint job to try to stop that. And on this side, down on the yellow tab parts, it had corrosion, so I covered that in the hopes the corrosion won't get any worse. But we got to put this back on before we go a whole lot further. And in order to do that, I've got to get that little bent up tab through that area down there. I can't, I don't think I can hold it in camera and do this, so just hang tough for a minute. I'm hoping this piece of metal doesn't drop off as I try to straighten it out. But since it's had battery corrosion on it, you never know. So far so good. Okay. That's a goot. One nice thing about this particular robot is, other than just a couple of tabs, like the ones we bent down there and ones that we're going to bend here and here, the front and top are held on with screws. So it makes it a lot easier to get inside the toy and work on it. Now you've got this flap there, and the way the back is built, you insert the flap like so, and just tip this part up. Got some wires that are fighting me, like that, and like that. Then you've got these lower tabs that we just talked about. And I'm going to give those a twist. Okay. Now what we need to do is solder. Get a little more altitude here. Got to solder some of these wires back on before we get too far. Again, I realize this isn't on camera very well, but it's not real exciting. I'm just soldering a wire on. I think you know what that looks like. Okay, there we go. So now we should be able to do a test that's a little bit more complete. Because I won't have those battery clip wires hanging up on everything. Alright. Let's see what we've got now. Very good. It does have a bit of a lean back, but I didn't see any bent linkage, so there isn't really anything we're going to be doing about that. So now on the body front, obviously he's got a broken ear. I didn't have one of those in the junk room, so there wasn't anything we could do. I mean, if I 3D printed a whole new ear, it just, you know, might not look exactly the same, so it might be best just to leave it that way until someday a donor ear turns up somewhere. Someone in the past, probably a kid or who knows, had taken these return springs. These are for the doors so that they'll close after the guns go back in, and stretch the living pudding out of that. See that crumpled up area there? So in order to get the spring tight enough, I've had to bring this back up and bring in some extra. And I'm hoping that's enough to make that work. We're gonna find out. We're gonna find out shortly. Now let's get some of the screws in here, or at least enough of the screws to see if this thing is going to work. Was there anything else I was going to talk about? We talked about the battery box, we talked about the gun return spring, we talked about the walking gear, we talked about the broken antenna, the cracked helical gear, the lifting height of the gear that shifts between walking and rotating. That screw just kind of fell in. And that screw over there is missing, but I'll find one for it. Let's move this back a little bit more so we can get the full height of the toy in. And let's find out if it can operate with full body weight. Okay, it didn't open the gun. I think the guns are hitting. Yes, there's this metal part. Where's that? This metal part is part of this front piece that we just put on. And the guns right here are rubbing against that. So I think what I'm going to have to do is to take this front piece off again and make sure that that gets bent back enough so that it isn't rubbing right there. These guns have to be able to move. Let's just try it quickly here. If it doesn't happen right away and quickly, then I'll do it off camera. But I guess there's always the possibility too that the door springs. No, they seem pretty easy. I was going to go, maybe I've got them too tight now, but I don't think so. They feel about right. We had good gun movement before putting this piece on, so I think this has been bent. Oh yeah, this whole front has been stove in a little bit, and I guess it isn't going to take a whole lot for that to bind. So I'm not going to move it a whole lot. We're going to try it with just a little bit of movement there. And if that doesn't do it, then we'll add a little bit more. In fact, you can see where the gun paint is scraped right there at the bottom. That's where it's been rubbing. Wow. I don't think I even needed to bend it that much. It's really thin metal. It'd really be easy for that to get bent. Okay, I think that looks better. They really should have made this front piece out of just a little bit heavier gauge metal. So I think the important screws are going to be these two bottom ones, as far as determining whether that's still going to rub or not. And then if we get something up here to make sure everything's pulled all the way back in place. Good. Good, let's call that good. Let's see what happens now. There we go. So there we have it. The Super Robot Rotate-O-Matic by Horikawa. Early 1980s. Criteria on this particular one. Very colorful. I may look into this foot that someone had been in before, just to make sure that everything was really fine down in there. Because the robot seems to have, well, it actually doesn't look bad, I guess, when I look at it straight on. I was looking at it through the camera and from back over here on the side, and it looked like it had a bit of a lean to it, but I think it's just the camera angle. And now the arms are adjustable the way they're supposed to be. It's walking and it's rotating-o-matic. Now if we can just find another ear for this puppy, it'll be complete.